Greetings and salutations, folks. Thanks for coming back to a video here on the Political Napalm. Today there are sunglasses on my face, and it is a cheeky reference to the topic that we're going to be discussing in today's video. It is going to be a little bit lighter fare for the viewers of this particular channel, as this one won't be obscenely political, but it's still going to have a slight political bent. If you understand the reference here with the sunglasses, which coincidentally actually just arrived in the mail today, they were for free because of the Google points that I had. So I have free Google sunglasses, and they were very, very situationally appropriate for this video. If you catch the reference, leave a comment down below and know that you have my deep appreciation for this. So today's video is the fact that Fall Out Boy, formerly classified as a emo band, and you could potentially still call them an emo band, but I've never really been into them. So other than Sugar We're Going Down Swinging, which was everywhere at the time when it was popular, you couldn't help but avoid that song even if you weren't particularly into Fall Out Boy. Anyway, they have decided to do a cover of Billy Joel's incredibly famous song called We Didn't Start the Fire. Brief little bit of history there for me and Billy Joel. My parents actually got to see him in concert when he was only known locally. He was known as being quite the little rebellious Jewish guy, and I'm like directly quoting what people said of Billy Joel in their youth. This isn't a modern reference, but simply to what he was known as at the time. For being a kind of leather jacket wearing punk when he was doing his clubs and bars and small gigs around Long Island. That's where I grew up. So Billy Joel is a somewhat of a hometown hero to me. Incredible human being. Many decades ago, they changed a law for how shell fishermen could fish oysters in the Long Island Sound. So Long Island Sound is bordered by the Atlantic Ocean on the south, and it wraps around and fills in the gap between Long Island and Connecticut, and it's called the Long Island Sound. There were fishermen who made their actual living, their day-to-day life and living, fishing shellfish, oysters, clams, etc., out of the Long Island Sound, and a change went into effect that was essentially going to kill that industry. And Billy Joel, being the hero that he is, went out on the Long Island Sound and in protest continued to fish in the way that the fishermen had been doing, which had now been banned, and got himself arrested for it. So I have a deep respect for Billy Joel and have enjoyed his music for many, many years, even though a good chunk of Billy Joel's catalog is essentially before my time. Some favorites are Goodnight Saigon, Pressure was one of my favorites. Uptown Girl was extremely popular on MTV for me growing up. And of course, We Didn't Start the Fire, which at the time when I was growing up, We Didn't Start the Fire basically was a social studies book. I mean, it was a history class wrapped up in a very palatable hamburger sandwich of a song. And there was actually quite a lot of learning that I had done from this song. When I had heard the song, even though a lot of the references were too old for me, I researched some of what was being discussed in the song and actually asked my parents. I mean, one of the key things there was that line of Stark Weather Homicide, Children of Thalidomide. I went and looked up what thalidomide was and asked my parents about it, because it was not something that I had known about at the time. It was not my generation, and it was known for causing birth defects. At the time, it was a very popular medicine that was out to fix several things and cause blood clots and cause infamous birth defects. So that song was a teaching song, really. And that is part of what I'm going to be doing in comparing and contrasting the original "We Didn't Start the Fire" to the modern day version from Fall Out Boy. One little bit of suspense that I will kill here is that the Fall Out Boy one is not chronological order, while Billy Joel's pretty much is. I'm not going to say it's down to the day or even the year, but within their decade clumps, it is most definitely um, chronological order from top to bottom. So you have references to Harry Truman, Red China, Joe DiMaggio, Joe McCarthy, and this is appropriate today because back then McCarthyism was about the Red Scare, and we're facing that in modern American politics. This belief that politicians are being bought out by Russians, that they're being bought out by China, that the United States is becoming communist and socialist and Marxist and everything. And predominantly the biggest people that truly believe in that are the baby boomers. And they, in some way, shape, or form, they might have been very young for it, but they lived through a Red Scare at one point in their history, and now they're living through it again. And I almost want to be like, did you not learn anything from the first time we had a Red Scare? Do you truly believe we're going through a second Red Scare in this day and age? But I did say I would be a little bit lighter in this video, so I don't want to get into that one too much. But I love the fact that McCarthyism is brought up in this song, and we're talking about both the original and the remake here in 2023. The H-Bomb, Sugar Ray's boxing match, Marlon Brando, Catcher in the Rye, Eisenhower vaccines, England's got a new queen. That's topical to today. Rocky Marciano, Liberace. Then we move on to Stalin, the Communist Bloc, Rock Around the Clock, Dacron, which is polyester. And this Wikipedia article, by the way, does a really good job of breaking down the references. If you're not particularly familiar with them. And Catcher in the Rye is a bit topical, maybe not so much today, but for my generation, because being Gen X, it is of common belief that Gen X gravitated towards that sort of nonchalant, laissez-faire, blasé kind of thing going on in Catcher in the Rye of just, whatever. I don't care. World could be on fire. I don't care. So I think my generation sort of gravitated a little bit towards Catcher in the Rye's themes. I wouldn't necessarily say that's true of modern generations, but certainly Gen X, latchkey kids raised by television, a little bit of internet. I believe there's a tie there. Einstein, James Dean, Elvis Presley, Disneyland, Bridget Bardot. Let's see, the Alabama reference. That one, I admit, there are certain references in the original one. Oh, the Montgomery bus boycott. Yeah, that reference I do understand, but when it's just simply referred to as Alabama, there could be so many things for that. But yeah, the Montgomery bus boycott, of course. Khrushchev is mentioned, Princess Grace, Trouble in the Suez, Peyton Place, which was scandalous at the time. Little Rock is very similar, of course, to Alabama. Mickey Mantle, Jack Kerouac, Sputnik. Shoe and Lie is definitely not a reference that I heard that much about, even in history. This the premier surviving an assassination attempt is one that I did not hear about. Bridge on the River Kwai, understand the reference there. Lebanon, Charles de Gaulle, obviously. Um, California baseball is a reference to the Dodgers and Giants moving there. I guess this one I would consider one of the more weaker ones there. Um, Charles Stockweather didn't really know that much about. Children of Thalidomide is something that I looked up. Obviously, Buddy Holly, The Day the Music Died, Ben Hur, Space Monkeys, Mafias, Hula Hoops, Fidel Castro, Edsel, Failing, U2, not the band, but the Spy Plane. Um, Most of what you see here is that there is some reference to pop culture, but most of it is very deeply historic. I mean, Psycho, there isn't really that much history there, and Chubby Checker obviously is a pop culture reference. But to me, the original just seems um, deeper. The Berlin, the separation between West and East Berlin, Bay of Pigs, leading to the Cuban Missile Crisis, John Glenn, Malcolm X, JFK's death, birth control, Ho Chi Minh. So, interesting little thing. If you happen to catch the video of the original Billy Joel song, there is an infamous picture that is shown in the video around the time that he's talking about Ho Chi Minh. Actually, it's more around the time where he's talking about the Vietnam War and things going on there. There is the famous picture of two Vietnamese men, and one of them is holding a gun and executing another one. The one who was being shot died. However, the one doing the shooting would eventually become an American citizen and live up in Tyson's Corner, Northern Virginia, near DC. Mind-blowing little fact that I found this out decades ago, because I used to go in and around the Northern Virginia area when I lived in Virginia. So I was pretty familiar with Loudoun County and Vienna and Fairfax, Alexandria, and I know Tyson's Corner. It's a big mall complex, a big shopping complex up there. And to think that that famous person, the one holding the gun and firing the shot, now is an American citizen, and unless he's passed away, lives up in Northern Virginia is mind-blowing to me. It's just crazy. Birth control, Ho Chi Minh, the moonshot, Woodstock, Watergate, punk rock, again, pop culture, but still to a degree global. Watergate is more contained to the United States history, but it does have far-reaching ramifications as to what happened. This line, when it hits in the song, was not one of the ones that I particularly knew, but obviously Reagan, Palestine, terror on the airlines with the aircraft hijackings that were happening at the time, the Ayatollah, Russians in Afghanistan, and then we go back to pop culture with Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride. Speaking of Sally Ride, I watched when the Challenger blew up. I was in school and watched that on TV, and we got sent home for the rest of the day after that because we were kids and we just saw a spaceship that had a teacher on it blow up in front of our face over there, and it was such a big deal for school kids at the time because of the Krista McAuliffe being on there and being a teacher. So teachers were very in touch with that and very happy and excited to show that. And yeah, that was a thing. Heavy Metal Suicide Solution by Ozzy, and that court case. This is a very famous court case over here with supposedly subliminal messages of shoot, 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 get the gun, which was not true. The birth of AIDS during the Reagan era, crack cocaine, Bernie Getz, the subway vigilante. Interesting little fact there. The Joker movie, that's only a few years old, was mediumly based on Bernie Getz and who he was at the time and what he did and everything. I didn't know that until today. I just happened to want to confirm that Bernie Getz was the subway vigilante, and I wanted to make sure I had my facts straight there. And then I was like, "Oh wow, Joker was based on him." Um, Never knew that. Never knew that that was actually based on a human being. And again, small piece of trivia there. When Joker hit the theaters, people were quite scared that um, slightly mentally on edge white males would start shooting sprees because of that movie, and some places were afraid to show it, that it might push um, slightly on edge people into doing over the edge things, like the way D&D was victimized in the 80s, and then you had heavy metal was victimized in the 80s, and then in the 90s you had like Doom and Duke Nukem for the Columbine shooting, and first person shooters were victimized. So people thought that, similar to all of those events, the Joker was going to be an instigating movie. I don't know that anybody put together at the time that it was sort of the reaction to a situation like that. It was the after effect of that thing happening. So maybe that is why they were concerned things would go crazy when Joker came up. But it was actually based on a crazy moment. And then China's under martial law. So, of course, we're back with China again. Rock and Roller Cola Wars and Hypodermics on the Shore, which was, it says Long Island, but I remember it more as New Jersey. I really don't remember it being Connecticut. I remember a little bit on Long Island towards the city, mostly New Jersey. Didn't really hear anything about Connecticut. So the original carries a lot of weight to it for me. It deals with some really, really big things globally, and a lot of it is American based, like JFK and everything. But it deals with global events, including the Vietnam War, the Korean War, China, Korea, Vietnam, everything from that. The Fall Out Boy version, to me, is considerably weaker. And I had this discussion with my girlfriend, who was a little younger than me, and she said, "Well, it's you've had your We Didn't Start the Fire," and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think We Didn't Start the Fire was so much more boomers. There was some stuff that Gen X had gone through, but it came out right smack in the middle of Gen X, and it had some of the stuff that we were living with, but not more at the end sixth or fifth of the song. The majority of the song, to me, is more aimed at boomers who were going through the stuff that Gen X was, the Challenger, Fall of the Berlin Wall, etc., but also more stuff that we, as Gen X, were not around for, the Kennedy assassination, for example. So the Fall Out Boy version talks about Captain Planet, and if you go to genius.com, they actually will tell you the references if you click on them. Captain Planet, weak. Arab Spring, a series of anti-government protests seeking to oust corrupt regimes in the Arab world. I actually, maybe I'm an idiot, I just didn't really ever know that one. I mean, I sort of knew of that one in reality, but not its reference. LA Riots, Rodney King, big. This one definitely carries weight. Deep fakes, no. I mean, yeah, this has some future potential to mean something. I just don't know that it really carries a lot of weight in this song right now, but maybe 5 years from now, or maybe even 2 years from now, this could be a serious issue. Earthquakes is too generic. Iceland Volcano. Oklahoma City Bomb more should be called the Oklahoma City Bombing with Timothy McVeigh. It is a very, very big American reference, and I think this one carries a lot of weight. I just think it's sort of referenced weakly. Kurt Cobain, yeah, some weight to that one. Pokemon global thing, yeah, I would say this one carries some weight. Very, very pop culture, and is a global phenomenon, especially in its inception. I mean, it's changed now, but in the beginning, of course, I mean, it's like Cabbage Patch Kids. Everybody was going crazy for Pokemon. Tiger Woods, honestly, a little weak. MySpace, I think, is a little bit week. More just social media. If the reference was social media, which would have included Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and things like that, I would say that it would carry more weight. Here, I find this to be a little weak. Monsanto GMOs, I think, is pretty strong. Um, Harry Potter, very strong, both in its fan base, the books and the movies, and what is going on now currently with Harry Potter's author and the trouble she's getting into for her comments. Twilight, week. Michael Jackson dies. That is rather global. He was beloved and full of a ton of controversy. So I think this one has merit. The nuclear accident in Fukushima definitely has a lot of merit being in the song, as its effects are still being felt even as far away as the United States Pacific coast. Crimean Peninsula, the Russian annexation of uh, the Crimean Peninsula in the Russo-Ukrainian War. Yeah, that's got some. That's pretty big. Cambridge Analytica. Yeah, the massive selling of private data. I don't know how I feel about its inclusion in this one. I think it's very big, but I don't think enough people truly understand it. However, this could be that point, like Children of Thalidomide, where people hear something and might not know a lot about it and look it up and be very surprised at how intense this reference actually is, and what it means. Kim Jong Un, yeah, Robert Downey Jr. I meant to pop culture. I don't. This one I find a little weak. More war in Afghanistan, of course, that makes sense. Cubs go all the way again. There were baseball references in the Billy Joel one, so I think it's on brand, but I find it to be a little weak. Obama, Spielberg, it's so vague. I don't think it's worth mentioning. Again, Obama's kind of vague. I mean, certainly a big point in American history and what it stands for, either good or bad, depending upon your perspective on it. A little non-specific. Same thing for Spielberg. Explosive Lebanon. Yeah, this was very big when it happened because a lot of conspiracy theories started about it when it happened. The Unabomber, Bobbitt John. I mean, it's a reference to John Wayne Bobbitt, also Northern Virginia, Manassas, Virginia. Not the it's not a DC suburb, but it is Northern Virginia. You can drive by the field where his member was thrown into the grass along Interstate 66 or 64, whichever is the one that goes from DC to 81. It passes by that field in Manassas. Bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing, valid. Little, yeah, valid. Balloon Boy. I don't think enough people would remember this. It may have been an intense news item at the time. I don't know if it has staying power to stick that people would really get this reference when you hear it, not maybe think of the movie or so. War on Terror, yeah, that one's very big. QAnon, unfortunately, sadly, is very big, more American than probably anything. Trump gets impeached twice. Historical event, whether you like it or not. Quite historical. More US based than global, but still some global references there. Polar Bears, Got No Ice. Firefest. I think this is a stupid inclusion. It's another one of those moments where you'd have to probably look it up if you don't know about it. Black Parade, I mean, really, this is just self serving at this point. They're talking about a similar band to Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance. This inclusion I think is stupid. Michael Phelps, a little vague, but yeah, very well known. Y2K is huge. Boris Johnson, vague, but I think worth an inclusion. Brexit's pretty big. Kanye West and Taylor Swift. When I first heard the song, I thought he was saying Kanye West, comma, Taylor Swift, just two famous people. He meant the MTV event where Kanye West interrupts Taylor Swift and talks about Beyonce and everything. Very pop culture, very talked about when it happened, but again, I think it's a weak reference. Stranger Things, Tiger King, Ever Given Suez. I mean, people would know the Suez Canal. I think Stranger Things and Tiger King is a little weak. Not particularly global on Tiger King, really, or even Stranger Things. I think of them as more American than global. Maybe they have some global reach there, but I find these two here just, yeah, that's what I think. Sandy Hook, Columbine, yeah, two very similar incidents, far-reaching effects in United States political climate. Sandra Bland, I had to look up. I didn't know anything about this. This sounds horrifying. What happened with her? I don't know why I don't know about this. I feel like this is something that I should have known about or heard, but I haven't. Tamir Rice, yes, definitely heard that one. ISIS, LeBron James, like I don't think that's worthy of a mention here, but okay, we had Joe DiMaggio in the other one. Shinzo Abe blown away. That's similar to obviously JFK. Meghan Markle, George Floyd. I think the George Floyd one, they're maybe asking for a bunch of flack on this, depending upon how you view that whole incident. Meghan Markle, don't really think is kind of worth mentioning, but yeah, I guess so. I have to admit, that one's probably just more of a personal thing. Burj Khalifa being the world's tallest tower, kind of weak. Metroid, as much as I love the series and played a bunch of its games, I think is weak. The Fermi paradox, about like, life can exist out there, that there should exist out there. Venus and Serena, fairly weak. Michael Jordan 23, there, Venus and Serena, Michael Jordan 23, I think of as very American specific. YouTube killed MTV. Okay, if Billy Joel had made a reference to Video Killed the Radio Star or something, I would think this one would be valid. This one's a little weak, but I think obviously a global phenomenon. SpongeBob, really completely weak to include in this. Golden State Killer caught. Michael Jordan 45. Woodstock 99, in case you don't know about this one, it was just a complete human travesty and so far away from the mentality of the first Woodstock. They directly compete with each other in terms of value sets. Keaton Batman, weak, though I just think it's a stupid inclusion. As much as I could possibly say that is one of my favorite Batman. Bush v. Gore, I don't think it has the impact that some people think it does, other than the fact of the Florida runoff over there, the hanging chads. Elon Musk, very topical for the time. Kaepernick, topical for the time. Texas failed electric grid. I think this was just a very short-lived news story that it's just probably not going to have a whole lot of impact in 3 or 4 years, 5 years. Jeff Bezos, climate change, white rhino goes extinct, Great Pacific garbage patch, horrifying event. Tom DeLonge and Aliens from Blink-182, kind of weak. Mars rover, yeah. Avatar, depending on which Avatar they're talking about, likely the James Cameron ones. Self-driving electric cars, I mean, that's sort of buried under the Elon Musk category there. And World Trade second Prince and Queen die. Likely a reference to Britain's got a new queen. But World Trade's second plane, I think, really, 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 really downplays 9/11. I would have, if you're going to talk about 9/11 in this song, which I absolutely think you should, if you're going to try and mirror the impact of the original, I find this reference, this being the 9/11 of the song, I think is incredibly weak. It doesn't really do 9/11 justice, and I apologize. I am maybe more intense about 9/11 than most, is I had two family members who worked in the World Trade Center. One of them did not work that day. One of them did, and actually was in building 2 when building 1 was hit, and made a lot of very, very smart choices that day to get out, and made smart choices that allowed him to get through 9/11 with his life. If he changed what he did that day at one or two key points and what he did that day, I would have lost him as a family member. And I didn't know what was going on with him until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's how bad the phone lines were at the time. His party of people that walked out of his building didn't even get cell reception until they crossed over the Brooklyn Bridge. And finally, one member of their troop got through to his wife, and then that wife called a bunch of the other wives and said, so and so is fine, so and so is fine. They got out. But I would have liked a more punchy summary of 9/11 if it's going to be included in this song, which I absolutely think it should be included in this song. I would want more out of it. So there we go, guys. That's the comparison between Billy Joel's original "We Didn't Start the Fire" and Fall Out Boy's "We Didn't Start the Fire" that came out today. Provide your commentary down below. I'm very interested in overall what you think about the two compared to each other, and the things that I've discussed in this video, whether you agree or disagree on some of the things that I consider weak, or some of the things that I consider incredibly impactful. So let me know down in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed this slightly lighter slice of life here on the Political Napalm. I'll see you guys in the next video.